Welcome back, guys, to another episode of The Wrong Kind of Black. So, why the fuck am I gay? How could I be so unfortunate, so hapless, so wretched to have been subjected to a life of homosexuality, especially being black? I mean, how more unfortunate could you get? I'm just kidding. It's something that I've always wondered, and this is what I'll be addressing in this episode. So I hope you guys enjoy it. So let me start from the beginning. My first homosexual experience was in year 1. I remember asking one of my classmates to drop his pants and show me his dick. The first guy refused, but I guess I persevered, and the second kid was willing. It feels a bit weird to talk about a kid showing me his bits, so I'll move on swiftly. I actually used to fancy girls during primary school. I had a crush on a girl named Sophie in year 3, a girl called Olivia in year 4, and 2 girls called Carly and Emma in year 6. My first crush in secondary school ended up being one of the lads I would always hang around with, and his name was Stephen in year 7. I remember having a crush on one of the smartest kids in the year called Michael in year 9. And I was sexually attracted to a kid called Jordan in year 10 and year 11. So I went to an all-boys school, which was predominated by Pakistani Muslims, which was a hotbed for homophobia, of course. So I'm a kid, and obviously I'm thinking, oh shit, is this just a phase, or am I actually gay? So I remember being 15 years old and telling myself, it seems like you might be gay. Let's give it 5 years. If you're still gay after 5 years, then you're probably going to be gay forever. I also want you to understand the context. Most of the guys I see I'm not sexually attracted to. All my mates were masculine males who had similar interests, who I had absolutely no sexual attraction to. My crushes were less than 1% of the males I had met in my life so far. Now, I'm a relatively masculine teen who aspires to be a professional footballer, like most masculine teen boys who grew up watching and playing football in Manchester. My dad is Nigerian, who regularly makes ignorant homophobic comments while watching TV. Both my mum and dad didn't have positive things to say about homosexuals. My mum was strangely quiet about these things when my dad made these comments. I would go as far as to extrapolate that she wasn't homophobic because she was a registered nurse and regularly treated patients with anal incontinence, which are problems you can imagine submissive gays will have after having frequent anal intercourse. And I would occasionally ask her questions about gay guys, which she responded to with complete understanding and zero animosity. You should also consider I had an identical twin brother who was as alpha male as I was. And we were so boisterous and competitive, we regularly had bloody fights at home. Back in the 90s, there was one family computer, as was the norm, and when we came home, we alternated spanking the monkey while the other would be upstairs playing video games. I always watched heterosexual porn since I was too afraid of taking any risk whatsoever that I would be caught watching gay porn. My mum, however, once found a downloaded illicit image which made my parents put a password on the computer. But she was swimming against the current since she had 2 ravaging, horny teenage sons, so we somehow found out the password and of course resumed practice. Then the gods brought us something called in-private filtering on Internet Explorer, which I remember seeing advertised on the TV, under the guise of preventing a beneficiary of a gift from accessing your browsing history. Then the fun began. So some of you are wondering, how the fuck are you gay if you watch heterosexual porn? Well, every time I watched it, I would find a video where I could easily imagine the girl getting fucked is a guy. Then, when I first plucked up the courage to try gay porn after discovering in-private filtering on Internet Explorer, I never went back. I ejaculated so quickly, I didn't even have to go to page 2 to find an acceptable video to bust a nut to. I remember being shocked at how many videos there were and how many different kind of men were fucking and getting fucked. There was a whole world I knew absolutely nothing about. So, how did I navigate being gay when nobody around me knew? I used to hit the town with my twin and my cousin. This is how I knew they weren't gay. The lengths they would go to meet girls they'd been chatting to on MSN Messenger baffled me. I would also chat with girls on MSN Messenger because I liked the attention. Girls were these rare creatures who would seek attention from. And if you had a girl you could move to or maybe even have sex with, you'd be considered cool and would feel validated amongst your peers. But these motherfuckers didn't know when to call it a day. As we approached curfew, I'd be trying to manipulate them to come home, yet they'd be getting ready to get back on the tram to find some other girls to chirps. If you ever watched The In-Betweeners, I was Will trying to encourage the gang to call it quits and go home. So I broke my virginity when I was 16 in year 11. Looking back, it was a fucked up way to break your virginity, but it felt normal at the time. I had an uncle who was staying with the cousin we used to go to town with. He was fresh from Nigeria and is the most reprobate individual I've ever met. He was in his mid-20s and he only had one thing on his mind: pussy. He was messing around with this girl who seemed extremely loose, so to speak. My cousin met her at his house and told us that she was giving him extremely seductive glances. He called her when we were in town once and told her to bring 4 condoms, which she unreluctantly complied to. So me, my brother, my cousin, and his friend all took turns with this girl in a disabled toilet. I know, it's fucked up, right? When we had finished with her, we were all talking about the experience, and surprisingly to me, everyone else had enjoyed playing with the vagina, whereas I had been the only one just to bend her over and fuck her and get it over with. I remember being nervous as fuck, but if I had turned away, I would be bullied for the rest of my days, and that would be a teenage boy's worst nightmare. So I did what had to be done. So that's how I broke my virginity. I told my mates about it the next day, and I felt cool as fuck. So then I started college. I'm 17 years old, had already broken my virginity, free from school, and had completed puberty. I got lots of attention from girls, hung around with some of the cool kids, and I imagine I was pretty attractive at the time as well. I started dating this Filipino girl in the year above, which made me feel even cooler. I was invited to a house once, but I was such a fridge, I didn't even try to have sex with her. She got bored of just kissing and eventually dumped me. I remember having crushes on random individual guys around college, but I had to maintain my reputation and never dare to come out. All my friends were black or Muslim Asian at the time, so it wasn't even a question. When I started university, the porn intensified, but I was too cowardly to come out. All my roommates were heterosexual, loving life, and I spent most of my time in my room. My roommates made homophobic comments at the time, so that would never be the place that I was going to come out. Second year was more of the same, and my third year I travelled independently to a beautiful northern city in Spain. My crushes were also intensified, and it was becoming harder and harder to stay in the closet. My Spanish roommates were becoming suspicious, and simultaneously, I was becoming more insecure. Notwithstanding this was the best year of my life. I met my closest friends there and had unforgettable experiences. It got so hard that I eventually came out to one of my closest female friends, who, by the way, I had sex with one time, and I came out to my sister towards the end of that academic year. My third year would be the year that I started slowly coming out, as I went on to tell my twin brother, my friends I had met in Spain, and my roommates at the time in my final year of uni, who were all understanding and accepting. It was a positive experience coming out, for the most part. So when I finished uni, I went straight back to Spain to another beautiful northern city, but this time I was out the closet. The job I had allowed me to meet 150 different Spanish uni students every week over the summer. Obviously I tried to hit on a few students, but I was a rookie in this department. I ended up breaking my gay virginity with one of my roommates, as he told me he was bisexual on the last night I spent at the city. I then moved to the western Mediterranean coastal city called Valencia, and my Airbnb host turned out to be gay, who invited me to live with him since he seemed like he was infatuated with me. He introduced me to the gay life there, and that's when I became much more sexually active and a lot more secure about my sexual predilections. I met other more experienced teachers at my job who were also on the prowl, who gave me lots of tips when it came to pulling these naive and impressionable uni students we were teaching. I ended up excelling in this department and topping the leaderboard with student body count, and even attracted jealousy from other teachers who fell short of me when it came to our individual pull-in success rate in terms of how many students we hooked up with. They were always going to lose that battle, since homosexuals are much more likely to be down to fuck. The following year, my twin joined the team, and we were so bad that headquarters got a complaint from a gay student who seemed bitter that I had no interest in him, who said, "My brother and I advanced every student we could during what the Spanish call un botellón, where we would all bring alcoholic beverage to the beach and get pissed before going into a club. Teachers were then banned from these infamous botellones that we'd have on the final day of the English immersion course on a Friday. That, by the way, was a great week. I ended up pulling 2 different students after another teacher and I had colluded to pretend it was my birthday midweek, and we had invited in all the students to a small bar in the city. It was so much fun. The bar was happy that we brought them so much business, and me and the teacher I had colluded with had an easy time finding a student to bring home with us. I often wingman my twin brother when I would pass along a female student who fell in love with me that week. The other teachers did the same when they had a gay student they thought I would be interested in. It was a blast. So, let's fast forward to today. I'm now 32 years old and I'm still attracted to guys. If anything, I'm just as horny as I was then. It's difficult to articulate exactly what I'm attracted to, but if I were to give it my best shot, I would say that I like young-looking guys who have feminine characteristics. I don't like guys who are too feminine or melodramatically feminine, and I definitely don't like guys who are masculine. I'm often attracted to heterosexual males, which most gays are, who look like I would have an easy time subjugating due to my masculine proclivities. I find it fascinating how I've remained attracted to guys, and it's obvious to me that I am biologically programmed to be attracted to males. Even when I see someone from a distance who looks attractive, as soon as I perceive the childbearing hips of a woman, I'm automatically turned off. It's weird. Another thing to note is the smell. I do not like the smell of a woman, and I'm referring to their sweat, but I'm aroused by the smell of a guy that I'm sexually attracted to. This is the factor that corroborates the fact that it's in my biological makeup to be sexually attracted to males. On a more romantic scale, I feel as though my brain and my body are seeking intimacy from a male that I can make submit to me on an emotional and physical level. If you think about it, the social hierarchy is predicated on male and female attraction. Due to the laws of hypergamy, which is the notion that women are attracted to men who can provide more resources than they can muster, I feel like I'm flying under the radar when it comes to dating. Don't get me wrong, homosexuals function in exactly the same way. By and large, submissive homosexuals prefer meaningful relationships with men who can provide more than what they can. The difference being due to the sexually active nature of the gay community, it's a lot easier for a poor gay guy to pull a submissive homosexual than it is for a poor heterosexual man to pull a girl, most especially if the gay guy has a big dick or is in good shape, as they can be hard to come by in the gay world. My twin brother told me he has to date a girl at least once to have sex with a chick, whereas my pockets will stay full in a similar pursuit. So, you must be wondering whether it came out to my parents, and if so, how that experience went. So, my mum was the first one to find out. During the time that I spent in Valencia when I was living with the gay guy who introduced me to the homosexual world, I had gone to a small town in the province where they were celebrating gay pride. On a video call with my mum, she asked about my plans and I told her that I was going to that town. I didn't tell her what I was going for, but I just told her that I was visiting the town. One of my uncles had a daughter who was going to the same town, and he told my mum that she was going to this town to celebrate gay pride. So my mother asked me why I was going to the town, and she was wondering why I was going there. So she asked me whether there was anything I had to tell her, and I told her that, yeah, I'm gay, that's the reason why I was going. I didn't expect her to be intransigent to the idea of homosexuality due to what I said previously about her being somewhat receptive and open-minded and relaxed about the topic, but she seemed pretty surprised. She asked me whether she wanted me to tell my dad, and I responded as if I was indifferent whether she would tell him or not. She said she wouldn't tell him, and she ended up telling him a week after. So my dad didn't take it well at all. Bearing in mind I'm living outside of the country, so all I got was reports from my brother and my sister about how he had taken the information, which was not well. Pursuant to that, my mother obfuscated what was really happening at home, and she inferred that it wasn't a good idea for me to return home, as I'd planned to go home to spend Christmas with my family. And she was pretty deceptive about what was really transpiring. I obviously had an idea that the experience wouldn't be positive because he'd made homophobic comments in the past, and he's from a country where homosexuality is shunned and criminalized. Because of the way my mum handled the situation, I didn't speak to my parents for the next year, and during this time I went to go and live in China. Anyway, over time my dad ended up coming round to the idea and having to accept it, and my mum was very apologetic about how she dealt with the situation. And to this day my dad is somewhat relaxed about the idea, and I completely understand from his perspective. You know, he's not a particularly educated guy, I would say, and he's obviously shown that he has strong opinions about homosexuality, considering he identifies as a practicing Christian. I was somewhat angry about the idea since we never really grew up going to church or praying or really practicing the religion. So it seemed as though it was pretty sanctimonious for my father to be judgmental when he doesn't particularly live a pious lifestyle from my perspective and from my understanding. Both my brother and sister were really supportive during the time. They reported what was going on and they gave me advice about how I should approach the situation. Obviously, it was always going to rattle cages, and maybe I should have expected that a bit more. But either way, it was always infuriating, the idea that I had to come out and then for my parents to take it in the manner that they did. I know I'm not unique in this experience with anyone with parents who are religious, particularly whether it's Jewish or Christian or Muslims. Parents tend to act in similar ways, so I shouldn't have been surprised about that. Because I started traveling by then, and because I'd been exposed to more of the Western culture, and I've seen how receptive people are when it comes to sexuality, and considering all the people that I came out to had received the information positively, it was a huge disappointment on my part that my parents had responded in the way that they did. I felt victimized by the idea that I had to hide my sexual preferences, and I think that's what made me angrier. Obviously, it made me insecure. It made me feel like I wasted a valuable time in my life. I mean, if you think about it, for heterosexuals, the late teenage years are normally the best dating years. You get to learn about yourself. You gain more confidence as you date other people. And you tend to mature a lot quicker when you're dating other people. I felt as though those years were robbed from me because I never had the positive experience of dating people who I'm sexually attracted to, who are attracted to me. Also, the best years of life in terms of how young and attractive you are, I feel as though I never got to enjoy that experience. I think it's something that I'm going to be processing for the rest of my life. I do feel a level of resentment towards that. And considering I once was attracted to girls, I've always wondered whether my sexual preferences are attributable to the relationship that I had with my father. A lot of people theorize that gay people are born gay, that it's nature versus nurture, but there are some good cases as to whether homosexuality is more on the nurture side than the nature. One thing that I do know, though, is I have always been sexually attracted to males. I've tried to force myself to be sexually attracted to females, but I just don't like them in any capacity, emotionally or physically. Considering I've been living a homosexual lifestyle for over 15 years now and nothing has changed, whether it's the nature or nurture argument is irrespective because it's not something that I can change. It's weird because I do sometimes meet girls who I can see are objectively attractive, who I feel some sort of affinity towards, who I get along with. Sometimes I can tell that they're attracted to me, and I can see that if I were hypothetically heterosexual, that this is the kind of person that I would date. But when I think about them physically, and as I mentioned before, the smell, it turns me off and it doesn't seem something worth pursuing. And I think of the idea of being with them intimately or physically, and I don't feel any arousal whatsoever. If you think about the lengths that a lot of men go to get the girl that they want, is enough evidence to me that I am indeed homosexual. And as I talked about the things that are indicative of it being within my biological makeup, there's no way that I can conceive of the idea that I could be in an intimate, committed relationship with a woman. Every day I meet guys that I'm attracted to, and it reminds me that I am gay. Like, I don't feel these feelings towards women and never have, and I can extrapolate that I never will do. So it's not even something worth considering from my estimations. I mean, that's it really. So the idea behind this podcast episode was to give you another perspective. I've never met another homosexual who has exactly the same sexual predilections as myself, so I thought it was worthwhile sharing it on this podcast. Maybe you have met other homosexuals like me, but I think and I postulate that there's a lot more homosexuals who are like me who are in the closet. Perhaps homosexuals like me can get away with staying in the closet since they have masculine characteristics, so are harder to perceive and identify. I also feel somewhat privileged that I'm able to come out, obviously after having ruminated on it for a while. I could also say that there's a sort of arrogance from my part to be able to come out and feel this rage and anger towards my dad, when if I had been born in Nigeria, it's not even something I'd be able to consider because of how suppressed homosexuality is in that country. So taking stock, it's probably bold of me to come out in the way that I did to my dad, which is probably why he reacted in the way that he did. But I'm happy that even though we don't have a close relationship, he has come round to it. And maybe there's a lot of parents who never have. And maybe there's a lot of homosexuals who are still and will continue to be estranged from their families because of homophobia. I know for Muslims, it's a lot harder to come out to your parents. I mean, the family is everything for lots of Muslim families due to the cultures that the religion is associated with. And maybe I'm lucky to be able to come out and live a homosexual lifestyle and be secure with what my sexual preferences are and being able to have a relationship and be open about it. I mean, maybe the only reason I get to live and enjoy a homosexual lifestyle is because I was born in a country that is open to homosexual relationships. And within my lifetime, gay marriage has been legalized in the UK. So it might be another reason why I've taken the attitude that I've had towards homophobia and how my parents have been with homosexuality. Even in the UK, I meet a lot of white homosexuals from an older generation who never could have considered coming out, which is why a lot of them have come out when they've already been married and had children. And maybe they feel robbed of the opportunity to live a homosexual lifestyle, and perhaps they feel resentful about it too. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's my experience of being a homosexual and coming out. Looking back, it's a bit of a funny story really about how it all transpired, but it's pretty unique as well because I was born in a time where homosexuality was finally becoming accepted. There are still many parts of the world that I feel uncomfortable going to have an open homosexual relationship, but because of my masculine characteristics, I can normally get away with going to these places and nobody ever really giving me any issues unless they see me with a guy being intimate, which I normally don't do anyway. Most people that I meet never can tell that I'm gay, and when I do tell them that I'm gay, they're surprised. I mean, some people did guess, probably due to my insecurity, when they knew me for a while and never really having seen me date girls or talk about girls as passionately and effervescently as, let's say, my brother or my cousin. But a lot of people have told me that they never would have thought that I was gay if I hadn't told them. As I said, there's still lots to explore about sexuality, and there's still a lot that we don't know. And I'm open to having conversations about it, and I'm not easily offended. You don't need many brain cells to understand that a homosexual couple can't have children, so it does go against the laws of nature in terms of procreation. I live in the UK and I have met many people who should not be having children. I wouldn't say the world is overpopulated, but there are plenty of us to continue the human race. Homosexuals are the minority, and I can tell you that from first-hand experience. It is frustrating meeting a guy that you're sexually attracted to, who most of the times is invariably heterosexual and prefers women. Humans are interesting animals, so to speak. And there's a lot that we don't know about ourselves, and sexuality is one of them that we haven't seemed to apprehend. I'm sure there's going to be lots more discoveries about sexuality and what makes us sexually attracted to someone. Whether it's predicated on the relationships that we have with our parents or not, it is a fascinating area that we've not explored yet. The one argument that I do not like is that all homosexuals have had bad relationships with their fathers. I've met a lot of gay guys who have really good relationships with the fathers and really good relationships with the mothers. So that is a theory that has already been debunked. So whatever conversation we have about sexuality, it has to be impartial. Because I'm sure, unless you're living under a rock, you've met lots of homosexuals who are completely fine and who are completely compatible in a progressive society. Obviously, there's all kinds of homosexuals who live really sexually active lifestyles, homosexuals who are more centrist, homosexuals who are far left, homosexuals who are more religious. I mean, just like heterosexuals, I don't think it's right to generalize all homosexuals into one community, which is why, me personally, I don't like the idea of the LGBTQ plus community, because what it does is it labels us all and generalizes all as the same people. Sure, we all have the same struggles, considering they're not contemporary relationships to have, but it's a completely different experience being homosexual than it is for a transgender person to undergo surgery to be who they claim that they are. I cannot resonate with that. I didn't have to do that to be who I was. So yeah, I thought I'd point that out. So I'm going to wrap it up there, and I hope this episode has given you some more perspective on homosexuality. I feel as though masculine homosexuals are underrepresented, and too many people generalize all homosexuals as being feminine, submissive, and homogenous. If you enjoyed this episode, follow for more content like this, and until next time, peace out.